$1,000,000 per granite slab. You don't want to miss out on this special offer. Visit them today at CAP Saltwell Industrial Site, St. Kitts, or call them at 466-4938, 466-8051, 466-1280, 466-5892, and 466-7069. Or you can fax them at 466-4939. Builders Paradise, where your island dreams begin.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Thought That Get Results. I'm Everett Weber Herbert, and as per usual, we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, why don't you drop us a line, address it to a Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. So give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. By the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed, 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. If you have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when you get in the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves, and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards. But we always encourage you to be forceful with your point. Again, thank you all for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. You can also join us via our video stream or our Facebook page, and also you can join us via YouTube. You click on YouTube, click on subscribe, and then you have us there, right there on Vaughan Radio to view the stream live by video. Also, you can get us on www.vaughanradio.com. Tonight, we are fully loaded. We're at full strength. Right, Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Well, it is so psychologically rewarding to see a full house. And you know, many hands make work light. And so when all my fellow panelists say in, I am elated. And this evening, of course, is more or less one of those evenings when I'm so elated that I must say congratulations to all of us for being here tonight. You know, the load, of course, would be much easier. Well, I must say good evening to, again, my fellow panelists, the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly, the gracious people of Nevis, those who will be listening to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin, and will be viewing us also on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, we are the show of the century, very widely listened to. And I hope this evening, having a full slate, we will have a lot of new information to be disseminated to our people, because there's a thirst for the Let's Talk program every Tuesday night. Now we've got a full house, then we will hear what all of us have to say. Webo, good evening.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and good evening to my colleagues around the table. It is good to be back after missing a few weeks. Let me say a very special good evening to our listeners and viewers here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and throughout the wider world, really, because this is a show that is a global phenomenon. I want to say good evening to all those persons who are in our various hospitals here in St. Kitts and Nevis who are not doing so well. You know, I hope that they will be up and about very shortly. I want to say to those families who are in mourning, my condolences, and I hope that they can remember their loved one with fond memory. Well, over the past few weeks, we have had quite a number of school graduations, and I want to say congratulations to all of those grade 6 students who would have gone through our primary education system. I think that all of the graduation were, from those that I attended, the results are very much encouraging. I want to say congratulations to the students, to the parents, to the teachers. I believe that the teachers now would have a well-deserved summer rest and certainly look forward to another school year in September. It is good to be back, Webo, and I am indeed looking forward to tonight's discussion.
Ted Hobson, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and good evening to all the people in St. Kitts and Nevis who are listening to this program, and of course throughout the universe, because as one of the speakers said, this program is listened to throughout the world. Well, it's good to be back. I had a hip operation and kept me off my feet for a while, but it's really good to be back, and I'm looking forward tonight to an interesting program. During the time I was away, of course, I kept in touch, and I listened every Tuesday night and enjoyed hearing Mr. Stanley, of course, and the others. And I'm glad to be back, Webo.
Conrad Naya Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and once again, a pleasant good evening to your hard-working staff here at Fun Radio. To everyone in tune to the program, good evening to Nivisians who are returning for the Culturama celebration. I say good evening to a very special cousin in the area of Prospect and a visiting member. I say good evening to you both. Webo, I'm happy to be back again as we continue to work hard to find a balance here. Of course, it's a festive occasion again, and if we can just lend our minds to that for a moment and enjoy it, and I wish everyone can do that and have fun for the season. And of course, there is a concert on the Brownhill Hard Court. I would encourage everyone to go forward there and support the organizers, and to get involved generally, Webo. And beyond that, Webo, we go back to our hard work again. So let's have a good time for this Culturama, Webo. And tonight, yes, I am very much into participating in any discussion that would be put on the table, Webo. Yeah.
Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, Webo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences. And if I may, I would like to just say hello to Pam, Anne, and Mr. Martin there in St. Thomas, along with my cousin Errol. And in St. Kitts, my cousin Sinwick. I hope you guys are doing well tonight. Let me not forget my husband in the UK and all those people in the UK who stay up at late hours just to listen to us. And of course, to the people in the wider diaspora, including places like China. I understand we have someone who's working in China, actually. So it's a pleasure being here again. And someone, well, not just one person, but most of us have already remarked on how good it is, or how to have a full house tonight. And I'm no exception. It really is a pleasure to be amongst these folks here. I'm not going to say these old men or this young man. But I'm sure that Mr. Hobson feels rejuvenated with the new hip and all that. It's good to have him back, Mr. Hobson. Welcome back. Thanks for the invitation to join you.
Again, it's so pleasing to have a full house. When a long time ago, they used to have a phrase in a song, "Are all the children in?" And when everybody's in, everybody feels good and at peace. But before, I know some have indicated there are a couple of things they might like to touch on. But before we do that, for the cricketers like Ted and Edric, for instance, what a most spectacular cricket World Cup final game or final minutes. I've never seen anything like that.
Never.
I swear it was the greatest game ending I've ever seen. But that was something else, right? I don't know how many you side, but
I didn't really see that, but I saw two spectacular catches, and they will go down in history. One where this fellow caught the ball. The ball was over the boundary, but he was able to tap it back into the boundary
It still was out.
and was so athletically pleasing to see how he was able to gallop at that ball and caught it. It was just spectacular. And there was another one, I think it was the West Indies player who caught one, and he was so elated. I think it was the last ball of that match. However, I enjoyed the short pieces of cricket that I am able to watch. I don't have much time to watch it. I love the game, but we've been doing so poorly at sometimes as the West Indies team. I lose interest in watching. But at the same time, we shouldn't forget the game. It's a great game. Love the game. I didn't really see the finals, but England won. Anyway, well, congratulations to the cricketers. And while we're on cricket, Chris Gayle, as I understood, won that case in Australia, but seemingly they don't want to pay him. I wonder if it's because they feel it is too much money coming back to the West Indies. I don't know what it is, but
Only $300,000.
but doesn't matter.
Should be able to pay.
He
Small potatoes.
yeah, he won, and he should in fact
And,
get
and they have to
paid.
pay him.
He should give
It's a court order.
yeah, he should be paid. But it was terrible for them to come up with such an accusation.
Well, my regret, of course, is that the West Indies didn't do as well as I thought they would. But I thought the competition, I thought the whole series was fantastic. I listened and looked at most of it, but that last match between New Zealand and England was epic, really, Webo. I went to church early that morning and made sure I got back in time. Got back around 10ish, and I looked at it from then on to the end of the match, and it was fantastic. It's unbelievable that a match could end in that way. Not only did they both make 241, but they also end up with 15 runs in the super over. And the only reason that England was able to win was that they made more sixes and fours throughout the series than New Zealand. It was an amazing, amazing cricket match, really. It has done a lot. It has done a lot for cricket, I believe, and I am very, very interested too to see that the women cricketers are doing well as well. They haven't done as well as I hope, but they are still out there, and I think that they are going to do us proud in the near future. But it was wonderful to see that last match.
But tell before you go, is it in the rule book regarding the number of sixes and the number of fours?
That was in the rules. That was laid down in the rules
Okay,
before.
okay.
It wasn't just made up at the last moment.
Okay.
Because they had to think of what would happen if there is a tie, and what would happen. And of course, New Zealand made some mistake. That mistake where they overthrow. It was only supposed to be 2 runs at most, and ended up getting 6, which of course turned the tables, really. New Zealand was unlucky, but well, they lost against the West Indies. They won against the West Indies by 5 runs, and of course they were lucky then. So who knows?
Okay, so what we got otherwise? Naya, you wanted to mention something? Would anybody who wants to put some on the table?
Well,
yes.
I would say, Webo, the great city of Brownhill, and let me just say this, Brownhillians lay claim to it, and I must lay claim too. I spent most of my time as a boy in Brownhill. Brownhill Bay, Brownhill School, and based on what's happening now, I am so proud of Brownhill. Complete transformation of that area. Well, one disappointing factor, and I believe it would rub my classmate in particular the wrong way, because I do not understand it. I was able to observe this as I went there, just above our school, which has been turned into the Maisie Bartlett community center. But my schoolmates right above the school, I just do not understand why that property has not been part of the transformation. Because what I understood as I passed there yesterday evening, that as they're attempting to transform it, make it so arranged with nice stones and so on, that the owner of the property or the person who's occupying the property refuses to accept the stones. And what I was told, no verification, but they're usually thrown away. But all these nice concrete blocks and walls, retaining walls are put up, and to have transformed Brownhill into a new city. This particular property is still there in its old stage. I do not know if it is the eccentricity of my schoolmate as to why he doesn't want the property to be transformed. So I'm going to use this opportunity to appeal to him. Let our gracious Brownhill, or gracious Brownhill School, old school, the Maisie Bartlett Community Center, enjoy that portion right in the forefront, to be transformed also, and to go forward by leaving the 1950s, the 1960s behind us. So, my friend, you're there. I said just a while ago, maybe it is because of some eccentricity on his part and not wanting to go forward with regard to the new world, the new transformation of Brownhill. And thus, he just probably wants to keep things back into the old stage. But please, let's work together. And the people of Brownhill, please talk with him. Find out exactly what the reasons are as to why he doesn't want the property to be transformed, just like all the other properties. And this is the main thoroughfare going into Brownhill. Webo, for now.
Webo, I know Naya brought it up, but I think I probably have a little closer and special interest in the concert that is supposed to be staged in Brownhill. And let me just maybe give a little background as it relates to the concert that is going to be in Brownhill. We're having a concert on the 28th of July, which is a Sunday evening, and it's a gospel concert. And we're trying to raise funds for some ladies who are in medical distress. And at the same time, we'll be celebrating my mother's 90th birthday. So I'm encouraging the whole of Nevis to come and celebrate my mother's 90th birthday with her, as well as help us raise funds for some ladies in, like I said, in medical distress. I didn't ask permission from these two ladies to hear their names on radio tonight, so I won't do that. But I just wanted to say, though, that I think it's a little unfortunate that sometimes we still have to keep doing these kind of things. Every time someone gets sick, you know, it pains me that I have to go with a sponsor card or whatever it is. I mean, I don't mind doing it. I go out there and every person I meet, I'm going to sell them a ticket. If you don't want to come, it's like I'll still collect the $20. It's only $20. This is someone who is helping us out. And by the way, I'm so sorry, I didn't even mention the international artist we are getting is Bridget Blucher. She and I, we have coordinated on a few, you know, or collaborated rather, on a few projects before, and so we kind of have a close relationship now. We were born on the same birthday and stuff like that, so we share a kind of friendship now that, you know, she was willing to come and sing for my mother, you know, for her birthday. But I said, since you're coming, why don't we extend the, you know, the courtesy to other people and let them get the opportunity to hear you? Because the last time she was here, it really, people were hearing about it the next day, and people were calling us, when are you bringing back Bridget? And we really couldn't bring her back because, she, of course, she has a full slate. You know, she's always busy. She'll always just jetting all over the world, you know, having concerts. And so when she said that she was going to be in St. Kitts to launch a book around the same time that my mother's birthday, I got excited and was like, oh so you're going to come to my mother's, so we were going to have a little thing at occasions at my little place there, and she was going to come and sing for mommy. And then after I heard about these ladies, I said, no, why don't we try and extend, do something for these ladies, raise some funds for these ladies and help them. And like I said, and I started to say, and I regret having to say it, but I think it's about time that, we're being looked after a little better in this country. Too much money is being spent on things, trivial things, and every time people get sick, and like I've said before, take some of the SIDF money, make it available so that people can have a fund that they can tap into, when they have these emergencies, instead of people having to go out and be, raising funds. I mean, you imagine that you're sick and you still have to go out and sell tickets to go to a concert. And don't take it personal, Mr. Brown. But I'm just saying, it's unfortunate that we still have to be doing these things. But we're quite willing to help. My family, they're well behind me in this venture because I'm the one who would have proposed it. Let us go, make sure that we'll sort out these ladies. And I have a passion for women and women issues, so I don't mind doing it. But like I said, I'm appealing to the entire New Vision population, as well as people in St. Kitts, because people have been going back and forth. People are spending $80 going round trip to go to a music festival and still paying $100 and something. We're only charging $20 for this concert because we want everybody to come out and support, So I'm looking forward to people to come out next Sunday on the 28th and give us all the support and love that you can. Thank you very much for the opportunity to say that. I just wanted to jump on something that Stanley would have said as it relates to the transformation of Brown Hill. And Stanley need to understand that not everybody wants to go into the 21st or the 22nd century. Some people feel comfortable in the century in which they grew up. I personally have a few things that I would have liked, that could have stayed in place for me to recognize Brown Hill, because right now you go to Brown Hill and you can't recognize no place in Brown Hill. I drive up my mother and she's like, okay, where are we now? I mean, it has been a transformation, and I'm not saying that it's anything that looks bad. I'm just saying that some things I think could have been retained so that people, have some landmarks and stuff like that. No, when you come into Brown, I mean, you can't come by Maisie Bartlett and see the guinea tree that used to be there. That's gone. That tree has been sacrificed. A lot of trees have been sacrificed, by the way, and I think that maybe we're going to have to do something about, replanting some trees in that area. I hope there's a plan to do that. The bridge got, and I know last year I would have appealed to people when Stanley was inviting people to come home and see the beautiful roads and all that. I would have appealed to people to come and make sure that you take a last look at Brownlee, because really it has been transformed. You're not going to recognize Brownlee when you come now. Like I said, it's not all bad, but if I want my friends to have a certain look about it, I think I reserve that right. I don't know that I need to be publicly shamed, to conform to what everybody else is having. I didn't necessarily want to have, a concrete, wall either, and Naya didn't have to get a job offer me to fix my gate. I mean, I was good as long as my roads are kept clean and all this of it, but my issue is that, we do all that. We transform the place, and then when you look at the side of the roads, go into Brown Hill, and you see garbage at the side of the road, that does not sit well with me. I say we put focus on the things that really are meaningful, and do not put any public pressure. Do not shame the person who says, this is how I would like to have my property looking, because it's not like the property is really, a property that is going to, embarrass anybody. So I just said that, not to get in any row over it, but just to say the bridge got, the dam is not there. None of the dams that we used to call dams, we used to catch water there. So nobody's going to come back now for posterity's sake and think they're going to take any pictures. If you all missed the opportunity last year, too bad, because I did extend an invitation for you all to come home, those of you from Brown Hill. Anyways, not all bad, all gone yet, because the bridge, I understand we're going to get a new fancy bridge. So people come home this year and make sure that you take all the pictures you can of what it, some of the things that are still there, because everything is changing, like Stanley said before. And like I said, I don't object to all of it, but like I said, we could have retained some of it just for posterity's sake, and to at least Brown Hill had a uniqueness about it. Now Brown Hill is no longer unique. Brown Hill is just a development, and I don't like that we're being looked at as just a development, but I'll live with it. No complaints.
Well, let me just
one note, Webbo, before Stanley come in here. It's one thing to have hallmark that you could, you could look forward to, no matter how ancient it may be. Another thing is if you're going to have dilapidated buildings, and
I saw.
And yeah, I saw. I get the impression that what Dr. Bartlett is talking about is something quite different to what Stanley is talking about. I think Stanley is talking more on the area of a dilapidated
No.
building,
No.
rather than a
No, he's talking about the fence, that the fence does not
fence,
conform to the
a
modern,
dilapidated
modern
fence. Then
Let me say what I want to say. It's an eyesore.
well,
I
that's what-
passed there with some people who came in, and I pointed them to the building that gave me the foundation of my education. It is now the Maisie Bartlett Center, Community Center. And no matter how you do it, no matter how you twist it or turn it, it is still the old Brownhill School, the foundation of many of us, many people who came out and have done very well in life. That structure is still there. The base of that structure is still there. But when you look on the opposite of that, it's an eyesore. And I'm saying there are people who might be creative enough to tweak it a little and not for it to be such an eyesore, but it's a complete left back in the dark ages. Trees that you have mentioned, I passed this afternoon in an area, and a mango tree that I thought would have been blossoming with mangoes died. So some of these trees, no matter how you try to preserve them, they ultimately will die. But there are certain things, structures, that need to be looked at and to be brought into the 21st century. And nobody's going to tell me that leaving that particular property as is something complementary for posterity and the historical preservation of my beloved Brownhill. I am from Church Ground, but my foundation is in Brownhill. And I'm just saying Brownhill people should come on board and get the area, the environment, up to the 21st century. It looks good. Major transformation. And it's an enhancement of property values. So, in that regard, there are things that will always remain. Bridgecut will always be there, even though they attempt to transform it and beautify it. Bridgecut will always be there, in my view. And you can't change Bridgecut. There are areas that, no matter what you do, they will remain historical up to a certain point. But when you got an eyesore, it's an eyesore.
But Mr. Stanley, I really don't like to have to argue the point, but when you're coming down Bridgecut Hill, if you're coming to Brownhill and you're coming down the hill presently now, just before you get over the bridge, if you look straight ahead, there's a property there, and the amount of garbage that is there, and I have not heard you mention anything about that. I mean, that for me is an eyesore. But to see somebody as a fence that does not conform to the cinder block thing, I mean, and say that that is an eyesore, I don't agree with you necessarily. What I'm saying is an eyesore for me. I guess it's not an eyesore for you, because I just don't understand up to this moment, though, why something has not been done about the garbage. And I'm sure all of us here who have traversed that road would have seen that, and that is so appalling. And I don't like, maybe I don't want to call it for what it is, but the bad thing is, never mind. Maybe I should leave it right there.
But I look at the transformation of Bridgecut, and I've seen the excavation going all the way into the gut, and it's a beautification strategy or
No, not on that side. Not on that side of the gut. Not on that side of the gut. Mr. Brand, you're well aware of what I'm talking about, right?
So
I even took pictures and sent them around. I was like, why is the property being left, you know?
So
people are
all some
obviously
people got to
just-
do is to go there and pick up the garbage.
No. But what I'm saying to you, though, you're looking at things differently. You're looking at one property without a fence in the fencing that is being, being replaced by the wall, and that is an eyesore. But the garbage, when you come over the hill, the garbage is not an eyesore. But anyway, I'll leave it right there, Webbo.
Well, I think a property, if there's somebody living there, I'm not certain about the property, but listening to the discussion, I think if there's somebody living there, owners of the property, and decide not to put concrete blocks as their fence,
That's their prerogative.
it's their prerogative. I can't see it as an eyesore at all. It may be an eyesore to Stanley and for those who disregard people's personal concern or people's personal likings and likeness, because you know it's not everybody the same here. I mean, really and truly, yes, you know, like Hanley's Road, there's a lot of concrete blocks being put in Brownhill, but I think a property that all owners who decide not to, they will stand out. They will be unique. But you see it as an eyesore.
Right next to that property, there is a nice stone wall that has been erected by the government, by all people, by taxpayers' money. Nice natural stones being erected. I would say, based on creativity,
You see, people
well
always
put
like-
together,
people
and
always like-
a natural stone wall along that property,
But there was a natural stone wall there that they interfered with, though. You know that.
so they can put it back. And I am 99.9% certain that the government and the community would agree with that stone wall right next to this property to be placed there. But based on what I've been hearing,
They don't want it, they don't want it. Come on. It's a
Well,
democracy.
I'm here. I'm listening to the argument. Not an argument, but a discussion between Mr. Stanley and Dr. Bartlett as to transformation of the road enhancement project in Bartlett in Brownhill. Mr. Stanley, the truth is that when the government choose to undertake these kind of a project, we make requests of the property owners, and if they decide to, as it were, conform or adhere or to accede to the request of the government, then there are some people who just say to the government, look, leave my property as it is, and we just have to respect them. I hear your argument, Mr. Stanley, and I understand your argument, but every individual's property is his or her own castle, and that is how they want it. And we cannot, or we are not necessarily in the business of trying to strong arm anybody, so to speak, in having everything just as everybody else. If someone I hear your argument, you may disagree with me, but if you would have gone to someone and said, look, we are doing this project and we want to put up a fence or a wall or a block wall or a stone wall, and they said, no, leave my property as it is, we just have to.
Minister Brand, I hear you loud and clear. What I'm saying to you, that we're not talking only about concrete blocks, but right next to the property, there is a creative
Yes, the property
stone wall
the
was
property-
placed there,
the property-
and it looks it looks nice, and
Mr.
obviously
Stanley,
it would enhance this
I hear
that
Mr.
particular
Stanley.
property.
The property owner said to
Natural
us,
stone wall.
the property owner said to us, nobody touches property, and we have simply respected the wishes of the property owner. It's as simple
Because
as
it's a road enhancement project. It's not a
Um,
property enhancement project.
and
the communist approach.
you know, no, we are not
Right.
we are not doing any dictatorial approach or communist
Well,
approach.
I would think what Mr.
No,
Stanley-
I'm not attempting to insinuate that,
it's not about-
Mr. Brand.
it's
All
not
I'm
about
attempting to
communist
say is that here there are choices.
Yes.
There are choices, and
Well, if they-
there was a stone wall there. There was a tamarind tree. I think the tamarind tree might have been taken out. But that stone wall is so creative. Whoever put it together. It's modernized. It is structurally sound. And it enhances not only the property itself, but along that nice roadway that was just placed.
And we will put
there.
we will put one at the entrance of Brownhill coming in.
So
we'll
that little area there that,
Mr. Stanley,
that the government has put in a walkway, maybe they should use that same little area as a walkway and put the stone wall there. Since, okay, don't touch his boundary lines. Don't touch the boundary line, but at the same time, what has been placed on the property next to it,
I hear you.
just come along with that creative stone wall they put in there. Nice looking, modern, structurally sound.
Not if the property owners are not willing to have anything done.
Unless they won't charge you for obscurity for putting up the wall, but the wall can be 3 feet high. 3 feet high, right along the little walkway. Anyway, I leave the matter.
You know, I respect the people's opinion about their
Yeah.
own property.
You wouldn't be touching the person's property.
That's a communist approach.
You wouldn't be touching the person's property. There's a walkway right there. And all I'm saying is,
You see, that's the problem sometimes when we see somebody being different and we ridicule them, and in this little society, you know, basically treat them bad because they're simply being different. They conform with the law, they have good morals, everything, but they're a little different. And we say negative things about them, you know. That's not good. But you know, Webo, I wanted to talk about this, and sometimes I hate to complain. And I'm happy Mr. Hobson is here on this little matter, because I spent all day today in Charlestown trying to get a summons form. Because some people do me bad.
A summons form?
Yes, it's a summons form. Some people do me bad and I decide to take them to court. And so I went to the magistrate office, and they told me that they no longer has the form, because prior, you know, before I did that, go to the magistrate office, fill out the form, and pull the people in court. And they said they no longer had the form. The lawyers have the form, you know. So I start going to lawyer's office, and I went to about 3 or 4 of them. And basically what they're telling me, to get the form, I got to employ them, or words to that effect. And I'm wondering if these forms are not supposed to be public documents and very accessible by the public. Mr. Hobson.
Well, normally they have their forms there at the magistrate office for people to fill them up if they want. That's new to me, you know.
Well, they say they no longer have the form. The lawyers have the form, and I've been going from lawyers to lawyer's office, and I can't get a form unless
The lawyers could create the form, but the form are prescribed, and the prescribed forms are normally kept. Specimens of them are normally kept at the magistrate court, and the magistrate court clerk should be able to give you a copy of them.
Well,
that's what used to happen. I don't
they have
know
made it clear, and I know that used to happen because I've done that before, but they've made it clear the lawyers have the form. And the point I'm making here is that it looks like, you know, we are dealing with a situation where to get justice, we have to employ a lawyer. And and people must know that shouldn't be the case. These forms are public documents. If you want to pull somebody in court, you fill out the form. And you pull them in court. Well, I know in different places they have Citizen Advisory Bureau. I suppose you pick up these forms there, and sometimes you get legal information from these offices. But why is it poor people find it so difficult to get justice? And even the lawyer's office are twisting them around because they're giving them the impression that to pull anyone in court, you got to employ them. Because that's the impression I've been getting all day today, and I'm telling them that can't be right.
No, well, that's not true. Any private individual can take anybody to court.
Wow.
They don't have to have a lawyer.
Maybe you should try the legal department.
As
Maybe
I
they
said,
might be able to
normally I
assist
don't
you.
know, maybe you should have asked to have a little meeting with the magistrate and
You can do that, Ted?
Yeah?
You can do that?
Of course, why not?
Oh, really?
Magistrate is a public official. You could meet her and say, well, look, you used to have these forms, or what's the reason? And she probably give you a reason. The reason may be that the public don't bother take these forms anymore, and after a while they stop, you know, putting them down for people to take, and because people want to go to lawyer. People like to say, I'm giving you a lawyer, you know.
So if you, in generally speaking, in the justice system, if you have a issue and you don't know who to turn to, you can access to the magistrate and say, well, this is a problem I'm having with the system.
No, insofar as a form.
Oh, just a form.
Prescribed form, yes. But of course you have the legal department there, you have the legal department as well. You could ask a question.
But that's what I'm saying, Ted. If you look at the system and you just getting snubbed everywhere you go, and nobody's being able to give you proper answer the procedures. Because that's what happens, not just in the justice system, but since we were talking about that, that's why I put the question. Edric, you never had frustration in the system?
Oh, sure.
So that's what I'm talking about. So sometimes you don't know where to go to, how it's done. I mean, because when I have an issue, the first thing I like to ask, how does this system work? What's the procedure? So when I heard you just said, Ted, in reference tonight, you can access to the magistrate. That's why I quickly asked. So if you got something and you can ask, because sometimes you don't know who to ask.
Okay, we're going to take one short last stab at this. I don't want to be misunderstood. I do not want to be misunderstood. The public,
These are public offices, and the public ought to be able to go and ask a question. And there is no restriction from the ordinary man going and ask any public official a question. And that applies to the magistrate, it applies to the Inland Revenue. They have forms there and so forth to fill out, and they'll give you the form.
Or maybe they're online now. Maybe they should have directed them. Maybe you can download them.
Download them. I mean, they're online now. You
But
can
sometimes
download them.
it's to find out who to ask a question. But legal
That is the
department, I
point.
think,
That's
would be
why
able
I'm
to
saying,
direct
you know.
Yes.
I finally got around to it by the sympathy of one lawyer's office.
So you better
Because
duplicate the
basically all of them seems to be
Well, if
telling
you
me.
come to my office, we give you.
Well, I was heading there next, Mr. Hobson.
I mean, for instance, you have these ladies who have, you know, problems with getting maintenance and so forth. And
Call it child support, as it is.
my office do them freely. I mean, you don't have to have any money. You come to my office and we take them up. You know.
But that's very good, because it's important that the public need to understand this, that
Because-
do not be misled by some of the lawyers down there telling you we have to employ them to pull
You don't
somebody
have to
in
employ.
court,
I
you
mean,
know.
you know, and as I said, there is the legal department that I'm quite sure they will. I mean, they may not go into court and make a big issue for you and represent you in court, but they will give you advice. That's the whole idea of having government offices. They're paid for that. And the public have a right to be able to go to the legal department and say, look, I want to do this, and what should I do? You know.
But does the legal department entertain the public really? Shouldn't it be an office like a citizen advisory bureau?
Well, we don't have that.
We don't have-
We don't have that. In Sinkis, you have the legal aid department that you could go there and they will do certain matters for you. But we don't have a legal aid department in Nevis.
But I thought we.
Have one in Sinkis.
Okay, I thought there was a framework for it, though. But anyway, let me not speak out of turn.
yeah, I don't want to be misunderstood. And a half a second. Based on the fact that we have our rights as landowners, let us not trespass against my schoolmate. But
Mr. Stanley, you
and
never give up anything. huh?
therefore, there is a small, maybe about 3-foot walkway. I would advise Mr. Brand and his department to use.
Mr. Stanley?
Just a minute, Mr. Brand. I just brought you in because you're supposed to have the jurisdictional authority.
Okay, I'm going to let you finish, but I'm not going to let you finish, but I just want to ask a question which can help guide, might change, may not change what you're going to say. You said you'd offer Mr. Brand some advice. Did you say that?
No.
What you just said in reference to advice on Mr. Brand.
He has.
What
it is his
did you
department. I
just
don't remember
say
exactly what I
with-
said.
with- with-
I didn't say I was going to give him any advice.
Sounded like that, but anyway.
You want me to stop and rewind?
You can rewind it, Webber.
No. Work.
All right, you can rewind it.
No. Work
I'm
with me.
working with you.
Work
I'm
with
working
me.
with you.
But it's going to come at a cost.
Webber, I don't know what the cost would be, but at the same time.
No,
I
if you're
cannot-
if you are confident, you don't have to worry about the cost. You're good with that.
Webber, recommendation, not advice. Recommendation.
So you would give Mr. Brand some recommendations.
I'm recommending, and it's not really for Mr. Brand, it's also for the community.
Yeah, I understand that.
All right.
But I'm speaking
I just brought him
specifically.
in because he has the jurisdictional authority, but go ahead, Webo. Go ahead. But I just need to finish saying it because I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. Because the government cannot just come and take your property.
Exactly.
And therefore, I am saying that where there seems to be public thoroughfare, just take maybe 9 inches of it and put a nice little creative stone wall, just like the one next to that property, right along there, and you would not have trespassed against my schoolmate.
You'll have some technical issues to get him to stand on its own 9 inches. Right? But anyway,
So- and you're not
he's advised.
and you're not offering Mr. Brand any recommendations, any advice, or any suggestions.
I brought him in because I think he has the jurisdiction.
I understand that. I'm just asking you
But
a
it sounds to
direct.
me as if the Bebo is right. You're advising him what he should do.
No. That's, well, if I, if
Or you,
that-
or you,
I am
or
saying,
you're proposing.
proposing. Good,
Well-
thank you for the word. Thank you for the word, Ted.
Okay, so you're proposing this is what he should do.
The community is larger than Mr. Brand's.
Yeah, I understand.
Ministry.
Yeah, right. I get that.
All
My
right.
question is, you're offering some proposals to him.
Let's move on, Webo.
I got you. Mr. Brand, you wanted to say something.
Well, Webo, I go back to what I said earlier that we would have spoken to the gentleman, and he did indicate that look, we ought not to interfere with his fencing, his property, his boundary, and we just left it. We really don't want to get into any confrontation with any property owner. That is really the last thing that we want to do, you know. And we move on. We went to the next property, and where people would have given their consent, we would have done what we needed to do, and where they did not, we just move on. I hear Mr. Stanley, but there are some battles that you just need to not to fight.
Yep, concentrate on giving us a good road.
Yeah.
There's a nice little
Leave
stone
the
wall
stuff
of Hermitage. You know, you going up Hermitage, it's a nice little stone wall built there, man. Nice. I'd like to, this, we got to emerge from where we were to where we are and to thrust ourselves forward.
But it's not everybody needs to have a fence, you know?
You can't be too excessive neither.
And not everybody needs to have a wall, so I don't know what the biggest
You all
is.
come with a cost.
Place looks nice, man. Place looks nice.
All I really would like, you know, in all that y'all are doing, it's about time now that I think that the buildings, you know, the properties, you start numbering them. I'm getting to the point now that I don't want anybody ask me where nobody live anymore, because we went through Brownhill and we assigned numbers to the houses, and those people who wanted to participated, and their numbers on most of the houses. So if you're going to come into Brownhill and you're going to look for my house is number 43. It's on the right hand side of the road. You know, don't come deliver nobody else flowers to me if they're not living at number 43. And so I encourage other people to get your numbers on your houses, because when you come into Brownhill looks totally different now. You're not going to have any regular landmarks and all that. So people, please, those of you who have your numbers still in your bag, make sure you put them on your properties. Those of you who don't have numbers, contact me. Let us make sure that Brownhill is organized and not like other, you know, places that you're going to and you can't find your way around. You know, if we're going to progress must mean things that are done to enhance, you know, your lives, not just to look nice, because some things just look nice for a while. There's some communities that you go in, they look nice when they just build, and they at least they live up to the specs that Stanley would like. But after you know, a while you go inside, you can't believe the same community, you know, that you would have been there a couple of years ago. Having said that, along Cherry Garden, and don't want the individual who lives there, I don't know who lives there, to take it personal, but somebody has decided that they're going to just run their water straight out on the road. And when they do that, you can see areas already that the road, you know, has been damaged, because people just run their pipes straight out on the road. And I don't understand where in the world you could do that, except Nevis. But I think those are the kind of things that I think after a while, even though you start off with something that is brand spanking new, whatever term we use, if we don't have the upkeep, then it makes no sense spending all this money. It wouldn't make any sense. we need to make sure that we are doing things according to the regulations. We are doing things within our confines, and we do not, because as it is now, I think the person who is piping the water out there just has said to himself, I don't care, I don't want my place to get wet, but I don't care what happens to the road. Like I said, I don't know who lives there, don't take it personal, but I don't think that is a practice that ought to, continue. And when we build things, all of us have to pay for it, and and like I said, I appreciate the roads. Going from Brownhill to Charleston now, I don't have to, I have alternate routes now,
Dr. Bradley, are you offering any proposals, suggestions, or anything for Mr. Brand?
For Mr. Brand, yes, Mr. Brand. I think get somebody whoever is piping their water out on the road, get them to fix that and pipe it inside the yard and find some plants to put it to, or find some other creative way of using the water.
But generally, though, isn't it, I don't know if it's a rule or system how it is, that normally you put those drainage.
That should go in your septic tank, in your soaker, sorry.
Yeah, but it never used to be. Before we used to have that, Ted, it never used to be that you can put the water from the kitchen and stuff like that outside in the drain. No,
Well,
that's not in
if you have
terms of
drains,
planning.
okay.
Well, I don't know. You must ask the minister about the planning whether they allow that.
If you have a drain,
that really should
That's
go
what
in your
normally-
It
soaker.
shouldn't be done. It shouldn't be done. But I see a lot of it being done. People just
That really should go in your
direct
soaker.
their water in the drain.
That is how it used to be, as far as I know. And I'm almost sure, I'm subject to correction, and somebody who has a lot of experience can tell me. Because when you put a plan, send a plan into planning department, you normally have to show where this wastewater will go.
Yeah,
And then,
your soak away.
Well,
In
they
your
have a
soaker,
soak away.
in your soak away.
They all these plans
Septic.
has
Once
to
you got the
show
septic?
every architect or planning, whatever they call them
In your
themselves,
soak
they have to show a soak away, and that's where the water's supposed to go, not in the street.
The water from your
not ever.
Well, that's what used to happen.
But
Everybody do that.
that's what I
that's what
was
Weber was
saying.
asking.
Yeah,
That's what I
everybody
was
do that.
asking,
That's what
and
he was-
therefore, I'm now asking. It used to be that way. When and why or how did it cease to be that way? Meaning, did they pass some new laws that say now you will cease doing it that way, and hereinafter it must now be turned into a septic?
Weber,
Well-
what used to happen before? There were no regulations. People used to just build a house, and there was no planning, there was no anything. People did what they loved. Now you've had planning legislation, and you have to submit the smallest little cube. You have to get planning permission.
Yep.
That's in
And-
theory.
Huh?
That's in.
No, the
But
law,
that-
the law says they have a planning law.
But that's
very,
what-
very,
that-
very comprehensive as well.
So that's what I mean when I said that's in theory, because what if I am able to present some evidence where, to use Mr. Hobson's example, to extend on it, that I know of cubs being built without the permission of planning, and they know.
Well,
Not supposed to.
well, you're not supposed to be.
Not supposed
Not
to
supposed to be.
be. And what if it has been done?
Well,
Then who is responsible to do what? In other words, Mr. Brand,
Yeah.
if let's say next to us on the outside, suppose by the time the show is finished, when we go outside on the next lot we see a cub,
Mm-hmm.
and then we find out there was no permission,
Mm-hmm.
then what?
The planning department would issue a stop order.
And if they don't, not stop ordering, no, because by the time we reach it, done bill.
even though it's done,
Well, but the planning department has the authority to demolish buildings. Actually, that is the extent that the law that is being provided by the planning department.
You're
to
not
actu-
working with me,
to
Mr.
actually,
Brad.
yes.
I understand what the law says.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. I understand that. So I gave a practical example. I said, so we go outside, and we meet a cub. We know what the law says about the cub and how it should have gotten there, the procedures. So we say we go and the cub is there. Then what?
Well, there are a number of options that the planning department can ask the property owner. They
But
can-
will they?
They have done it before, Weber.
Let's just check in.
They have been, as you put it, cubes that would have been constructed before, and the planning department would have issued certain stop orders and demanded of the individual to submit their plans within a certain period of time. Some persons would have done, some persons would not have done that, and matters keep they issue another stop order, another cease and desist order, and so on and things like that.
And then if the cub is already built, because according to what, to extend on the example, so what will they do if the cub is already built?
They
And
could
what if-
demolish the Weber.
It could be demolished.
Yeah,
The
it could be
planning
demolished.
department
The law is there.
would have asked the person on a number of occasions to submit their the drawings and so on for that quote unquote coup.
That's what if, let's further extend hypothetically, what if we find out that it's Mr. Stanley who built the cub there and the land wasn't his?
And the land wasn't his.
The land isn't his, yes.
Well, that's, Mr. Stanley is a crazy man.
But first of all, no permission will be, well,
Planning don't give permission for anyone to do anything on.
but he's saying that no permission was given. They just
Well, Weber, if Mr. Stanley, putting Mr. Stanley in context, would have built something on land that doesn't belong to him. Like I said, the planning department have certain process that they will go through. They would issue certain stop orders, make certain demands of Mr. Stanley to provide certain documents, and it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's
And
a
if
process.
Mr. Stanley being asked to provide the documents, but by the way, this thing is hypothetical. Let me put
I know.
this thing on.
Yes,
I
yes,
want
we
to
are
put the
dealing with
camera on
hypo-
Mr. Stanley because Mr. Stanley is thinking that it's actually happening. So,
Yes, we are dealing hypothetically.
right. So, Mr. Stanley, in trying to investigate, and you find out there and then that Mr. Stanley does not own the land, then what?
If Mr. Stanley does not own the land, Weber,
And he tells you that.
yeah.
Yes.
But the first thing I would think Mr. Stanley is a crazy man.
But no.
Hypothetically, right?
Okay, if you conclude he's a crazy man, then you leave him because he's crazy?
No. We try and fix the
Weber.
problem. We try and fix the issue.
How?
By one, we can ask Mr. Stanley to either purchase the land that which he would have built the property on. That's an option.
That is if government is government.
Uh,
land.
No.
That's an option. That is an
Not
option.
if it belongs to
um,
Naya.
To me, there's two issues here. An issue between Stanley and the true owner of the land.
Right.
And then there's an issue between Stanley and the
Planning
planning
department.
department. And the planning department have nothing to do with who land it is.
Right.
The planning department have something to do with the building that's been erected on the land.
that's right.
Yes.
Isn't that the case?
And
Yeah.
and the hypothetical scenario that Weber would have put on the table are not necessarily hypothetical because there have been real issues like that on the island of Nevis.
Okay, well, if
Um,
there have been real
where-
issues,
where-
can you give us what happened? Give us a
don't
real
know
case
some-
without
Weber,
revealing the
yes,
names and so
I
on and so
I
forth.
remember there was one issue some years ago where a young lady would have constructed a portion of her house on the neighbor's land. I believe the matter actually reached the court. I'm not certain, but what the young lady had to do was actually she had to purchase a portion of the neighbor's land in order to bring basically in conformity what she would have done. I believe that there was some purchase or some land swap or something, but this was some years ago. That was a real case, Weber.
Yeah.
So if something like that happens, and it is brought to the attention of the planning department, based on its authority, should deal with it, you're saying?
Yes, well, but the planning department have some responsibility to try and bring some resolution to the matter. We can't really leave things hanging in the air where persons would have done certain thing that does not conform to the regulation and what is required.
But
Okay, here's another question that maybe only a person like me would ask. Does it depend on who causes the infringement?
It shouldn't, Weber.
But does it?
No, it shouldn't. If someone goes outside of what is required at the planning department certainly have an obligation to see the process through.
Naya, you wanted to say something? Naya, you wanted to...
No, Webo. I was just thinking, but in that particular case, Mr. Brand, the planning department gave permission to build on somebody's land because the house was built.
No.
Part of the house. Part of the house. It was an extension.
No, what would have happened? Yeah. The plans were submitted to planning, and when they laid out the building, they would have put a piece of the building over the boundary. They would have probably shifted the house on the neighbor's land. So it's not that planning department would have given permission for the person to build on their land.
Okay.
But when they started constructing, they shifted the house on the neighbor's land, right?
Okay.
And there were times when planning would have tried to be a broker between both the owner and the property owners and so on and so forth.
So the owner did get in trouble with his or her neighbor.
Exactly.
Good. So that's an issue between and the neighbor, and a different issue with planning and the
Right.
builders. Okay, Bebo, just wanted to clarify that.
Rabo, you keep asking questions, and I don't know if you're trying to suggest that sometimes, and let me not say what you're trying to suggest. Let me just make an observation. What I find sometimes, we have laws on the books, and we have people who have the authority to execute, but sometimes they don't feel like they get the, they don't feel like they're getting the kind of support that they ought to get. And so sometimes they do not act, in the capacity in which, they have the authority to do so. And I find that is, I don't want to say it is commonplace, but I find that it's happening quite a bit. And a lot of times you'll hear individuals, who ought to be able to do something about a situation, and they don't, because they would express, their fear that, they would not be supported. So I don't know if planning has reservations, or there are individuals who are operating at that level who might have reservations sometimes in executing their duties. But I do know for a fact that happens often enough, that people are not comfortable.
It won't be supported by who?
By the authorities, well, the next, like I would imagine, the next person up.
Right, and they may be correct, but there's also a chance that they may not be. You agree with that?
No, I'm not
Because,
saying,
no,
I'm
no,
not saying
so-
what it is. I'm just saying what the perception seem to be.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
I'm not
Because
talking to reality.
sometimes I also know in our society, people use that as excuses not to execute their duties.
That's true, Ebo.
But you're right, and on the other hand, sometimes truly they do not get the support from the higher ups, because I always conclude that most of the times the way an organization is run reflects greatly on who is at the top. Because I argue that if you have workers in a particular establishment and they continue to not serve the public very well, if they have a leader or, let's say, a minister who they know will demand proper and fair service, they likely will do better. No? Mr. Ben, you
Yes, I agree with you, Weber.
Well, there are a lot of laws on the books for the good governance of the country. But there, because of our smallness, I suppose, everybody knows everybody, there is a reluctance to enforce the rules.
On certain people.
I just say on certain people. I mean, you take the tinting, glass tinting and so forth. I mean, the rules are there, and yet I see people who are supposed to be well educated, and they have their glass fully tinted, although they know the laws are there, and yet you would have thought that the police would stop them, but nothing is done. And so it is with a lot of the things that are going on in this country. There is no enforcement. There's a lack of the will to enforce, because everybody is afraid of what somebody will say about them, you know? And that is one of our problems in St. Kitts Nevis, and I suppose in the Eastern Caribbean, because of our smallness, nobody wants to offend anybody.
Yeah, but somebody must be in charge. When you're in charge, you must make sure that thing, you know,
But it
stick to
happens-
the regulations. What's the point making regulations, making
It
laws and
happens
we're not going to
elsewhere.
obey?
Trump says he can shoot somebody in the middle of New York City and, and gets away with it. So it happens not only in a small society, but in larger society also. He's fully convinced that he could shoot somebody in the middle of New York City and gets away with it.
Yeah, but that's corruption.
Well, is
One thing is corruption.
Is it different
And
from what you're
another
saying?
thing is that it's the lack of will, which is a little bit different to corruption.
Yeah, people ought to be supported. I think if you're going to put someone in charge of something and you give them the legislation to work with, yeah, I think they should be supported at all levels.
Good
And
evening,
outside
thank
of
you for
that-
holding.
Hello, good evening, Rebel. Let me back up here a little bit. If someone submits a plan to planning, aren't planning supposed to come on site and see what their wishes to approve is in true standing, or
Yeah,
they stays in the office and just make approval?
Okay,
I mean,
just
I
call
suppose the
out.
minister. I suppose the minister will answer it more precisely, but I know
Well-
that the planning department have inspectors that go out and inspect these buildings and so forth. So they're not
Well,
just.
in that case, when Mr. Stanley builds on somebody's land, the inspector should have gone out and make sure of the boundary mark, and that the house could fit on the person's property, and not go over on somebody else's land.
Caller, let me just make sure that you are aware that when we use the example, it was just
hypothetical.
hypothetical,
Yeah.
right?
I know.
Oh, okay, okay. yes.
Stanley will take that, man. Don't worry. And then again, if someone is building and they have to go to the bank to get money, the bank won't lend them the money until they see some sort of documentation for the land, and then they will issue the money. But in Mr. Stanley's case, he didn't have to go to the bank to get the money.
Right, that's
He went
correct.
straight ahead and bill.
Yes.
Yeah, but you see, okay, caller, you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but you see, what happens also sometimes is that, for instance, we have a situation right now on the outside where there is an electrical pole, one of the wires going to the light, burnt, and it's dangling. And that's about a few weeks now. Well, to be fair, I keep forgetting to call NEBLEC, but it is also their responsibility to know and to check on their equipment and everything and so on and so forth. Sometimes you have situations where people will say they keep calling. So then those departments and so on must understand it is their responsibility to check on their thing, not the public to have to tell them that there's a fault in your system. You understand what I'm saying? So that in the examples that we're talking now, Mr. Brand, with planning ought to be very thankful if someone were to able to point out to them that there's an infringement being done which falls under their
Yeah.
responsibility. Right, Mr. Brand?
Absolutely. Well,
Let me just take this first, Mr. Brand. I'll come back to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hey, Good night.
Yes, you're on the air. Could you go ahead?
Hey, Weber, good night.
Mr. Brand, go ahead, please.
Well, when an application is submitted to planning, a number of checks are normally done. And one of the checks that is normally done, Weber, is the land ownership, whether the person who is applying for the permission to develop the land actually owns the land. That is one. They normally check the register. Once the person would have provided a copy of the COT, they would conform it to the register if needs be. During the construction phase, Weber, there is a number of stages where the contractor who is constructing the home must request of the planning department to do an inspection. And the critical one is, Weber, is actually the setting out of the building. Really and truly, no construction should take place unless planning would have inspected the site and checked the layout of the building.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, Mr. Brand.
Yeah.
And to go back to the scenario that Mr. Hobson brought up in the first instance, because those are hardly examples that is going to go outside the normal. So we go outside and the COB is there.
Yes.
And you are in charge of planning, the officer, and you see it. And you reasonably know, well, that just pop up. So you are already aware whether you cite yourself or it was brought to your attention. Then what?
Well, but it is then up to the planning department to, like I said, in the first instance, issue what we call a stop order. Based on how the legislation is fashioned, that is basically the first step to issue what is known as a stop order. And then there are a number of procedures that takes place after that. But that is the first thing that would normally happen. The planning department would issue a stop order.
But I think we went as far as to say the COB is already built.
Yes.
But we still issue.
Yes.
But you still issue a stop
You still
order?
have to
First
issue a
step, first thing.
That's the first step, Weber.
So I built a COB and I live in there, and then you issue a thing for me to stop
You issue
building?
a stop order, and on the stop order, the remedy would be to submit the necessary plans to the planning department.
Including
which is-
title for the land and so on,
and all
to
of that,
go.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Mr. Stanley, I'm just checking because I know you longer than most of these guys.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm just yeah, right, and I also right because I noticed that you had gone quiet. So I hope
But
that
no,
you
I
also.
had
I
a
hope
good
that you
run,
also accept is a hypothetical.
No, I had a good run.
Oh, you had a good one. Okay.
On
Yeah.
this particular matter.
Okay, just check.
To the extent.
Just check. This is Thought That Get Results with Edric W. Stanley, Conrad Naya-Liber, Ted Hobson, the Honorable Spencer Brand, and Dr. Patricia Bartlett. We'll be back after these.
Sugar City St. Kitts. Keep it sweet. Keep listening to Vaughn.
Builder's Paradise is running a special on granite at an unbelievable starting price of $599.99 per slab. Check that price again. It's $599.99 per granite slab. You don't want to miss out on this special offer. Visit them today at CAP Saltwell Industrial Site, St. Kitts, or call them at 466-4938, 466-8051, 466-1280, 466-5892, and 466-7069. Or you can fax them at 466-4939. Builder's Paradise, where your island dreams begin.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results with Dr. Patricia Bartlett, Conrad Naya-Liber, Ted Hobson, Edric W. Stanley, and the Honorable Spencer Brand. Let's go back to the panel.
You remember, I don't know if we had wound on the discussion as it relates to planning and building, but I just made an observation because I know of cases of, one of the new developments that a lot of shortcuts, seem to have taken place, on the, government, schemes, these, one of the areas that you have the unaffordable low-income houses because a lot of them are
Unaffordable.
a lot of them unaffordable, but they're low-income houses. And the thing is, if planning cannot, I'm not blaming the people at planning, mind you. because I know sometimes people move people around because they think that they're too strict. But you need somebody who is strict. You need a woman in a position at planning who is going to stick to what the plan is and not going to compromise. And a lot of times we don't like that. We like to move women out of the way because they're going to stick to the rules, you know. But if you go over in the cherry
how do you
garden
say that?
area,
Dr. Bartlett.
if you go over in the cherry
Dr.
garden,
Bartlett.
if you go over in the cherry garden area, you're going to find a lot of shortcuts that happen over there. And guess who is going to suffer? The poor people who in those houses who cannot afford the remedy to those houses, because some of them were built and don't have any soak away. Some of them, you know, there's a lot of things wrong over there, and if we're true, you know, if we're honest about it, we recognize that a lot of shortcuts would, and just because it was done under the guise of government, then planning not supposed to say anything. I've heard about cases that, you know, people from planning were asked, you know, not to visit here, and they don't come back here. You know, have government projects sometimes going on, and planning don't have the oversight that they ought to have. And that is not right. You know, people ought to respect people in authority wherever your expertise is. You know, so if I'm in planning and I have this authority, let me execute my authority and not somebody overrule me just because they can.
We have had a number of female directors at planning. We have a number of talented, skillful young ladies who are very well equipped at planning at the moment, presently. And over the years, I think we would have had at least 3 female directors to my recollection at planning.
That's a lot.
Yeah, well, they have filled that position in the past, and you never know what can happen. The present director might say tomorrow that he need to go somewhere else, and we may need to find somebody else who can fill that position. Planning.
Why are we dispensing with women so often? I mean,
planning
there's
department,
folks who stay
Dr.
in one
Bartlett,
place
is
for
one of the
25
most
years.
difficult.
Teachers, we have people teaching for 25 years in one spot.
You said that persons, the planning department was told not to visit Cherry Garden during the construction phase.
No, I'm just saying what I've heard, mind you, that is a second-hand information. I
Well-
haven't heard anybody say anything to anybody. I'm just saying that there are times that I would have heard.
Well,
Because we live in a small society, like Mr. Hobson would have pointed out before.
Yeah, I'm sure that happened. I'm sure that happened. You know, one has to be very, very careful when you have these government projects, because politics come in sometimes and so forth. But I'm hoping that people responsible for these things. And one of the problems I had, I don't think it happens now, but I understand certainly in that particular project that you mentioned just now, you know, people were given houses to build, and they've never built houses before, you know, because of this administration, I know, has had to do a lot of remedial work because of that, you know, because we've had to go to court, we have had problems and that, because people were given the job of building these houses, and they didn't have the skills, and they didn't have the know-how, you know.
Yeah, but outside of that, if you have a planning department, they should be able to enforce the regulations. Because right now, with this, the person who thought that they should channel their water straight across their land, straight out in the road, if they had a soak away, and I don't know, maybe they have a soak away and it blocked up, I don't know what the issue is. But I'm just saying that, you know, this is, I think, it's demonstrative of the fact that, you know, things have not been done correctly. And if it's not done correctly on a government-monitored and managed site, how do you want to extend it to the wider, you know, community? I don't understand the kind of control that you ought to have. I mean, because as an individual, when I was building my little thing, you know, I had to conform, you know, I had to have this chamber and that chamber, and I well want to cut, you know, because it would be cheaper for me, but I had to conform.
Yeah,
Yes, because this chamber and that chamber, I think you're talking about the septic tank. If it's not
Yeah.
constructed properly, then you lead to problems. And those are some of the things that our planning department is trying to be as rigid as possible. There are simple things. There are simple things that some people may not want to do during the construction phase, but then in the long term, it creates a lot of problem for both the homeowner and the general public. A simple thing as a grease trap could create an outbreak of something. I mean, these are persons may not want to put in grease traps and so on and so forth, and it can create issues. And every day it's a battle. Every day the officers, the inspectors have to try and encourage our people to do what is right. I think one of the initiatives that we would have taken, I think we have launched a program right here on Von Radio to try and educate the general public of some of these issues, some of these things that they need to do, not only for their own benefit, but for the benefit of the general public. And we just have to keep at it. We just have to keep at it. We just have to be consistent in it.
So you as a minister responsible for planning, you would allow the workers to exercise their authority without hindrance?
I have never tell them not to. And you can ask any one of them.
Well, that's very comforting, you know. Things change sometimes over time and circumstance, political circumstance, election circumstance. But I always feel confident that you will hold your ground. I'm happy for that.
I would go a step further, Naya, and say to you that in my previous life,
Yeah.
you remember that I had a business that used to deal with planning?
Yes.
And I now have my son there doing the same job. And there are times when he get a little frustrated. I said, no, do the right thing.
Yeah, because
know,
irrespective
don't-
of the personality,
Precisely.
you must have a system in place that
Exactly.
works,
That
you know,
works.
and it ought to be whether it is Mr. Brann or Mr.
Exactly.
Hobson or whomever, you know, you need to leave the people alone to do the work. And I don't understand why you have so many, you know, how many female directors you say you already had? Why you dispense of them so fast? Because, like I said, people holding job for 25 years.
Oh, well, they have just decided to move on to something else.
No. You think if we like our job, we could just move on just like that? No. Because it is easier to get around a man. So move the women out of the way, and so we could get to cut all these corners. Especially contractors, you know, they like to tell you, oh, don't worry with that. You know, put in this. You know, use that half inch when you could use supposed to use an inch. And it's like, okay, so suppose my building crumble, he's not gonna be there, you know, for that. But you know, they're gonna suggest all kind of things that they could get around this, you know, and you know, like
So
I said,
women are tougher.
we enforce the rules. It's not about
Tougher in
necessarily
enforcing the
it's not
rules.
about necessarily being tougher, but it's like, okay, the rules.
Well,
we
yeah,
are- women are accustomed to, you know, we start early in the home. These are the rules, and if things you don't go by how the rules say, and things could go haywire, and by the time you get on the job site, it's much easier for you. But men like to always be negotiating positions, you know, and that's why you would always have a compromise here and a compromise there, and a, you know, a pipe run across the road there and all that.
I mean, I don't subscribe to the notion in terms of the position at potholes, you know.
Well, you don't.
People are people, and people have feelings. They operate emotionally. They operate sometimes rationally or irrationally. And this has nothing to do with gender. Nothing at all to do with gender. It has something to do with relationships. Because there are women who would be able to cut corners depending on their relationship with other people who are involved. And as a consequence, things sometimes run amok. So this gender thing that you continue to bring to the fore, I never subscribe to that notion. Because here,
Well, one of these days you'll get it. You may
no,
not get
because
it now,
I
but
will
when you have
tell you,
time
I will tell you
in
there are
your
so many,
retirement, maybe
there are
in your
so many
retirement.
ways in which female compromises their own authority simply because men are tougher. We have known to be far more tough than women. And you, I've heard mention, women are emotional. Sure, okay. And because of that, men will get around them. So there are times when they will bend the rules here and there, as the case might be. And some who would not bend the rules. There's some who are as tough as nails. But this has nothing at all to do with gender. Nothing whatsoever.
You don't get it, but one of these days you'll get it.
No, I've
I'll
been in it.
I'll keep working on you, Mr. Stanley.
I've been
until
in
when you
it.
get into your
I've been-
retirement, sometimes the thing is sometimes when you're reflecting, sometimes when you have to take a quiet moment and you reflect on things, sometimes they just come to you. So chew on it. For now you may not get it, and I'll continue to work with you. I'll continue to work with you. But one of these days you'll get it.
No,
because I know everybody.
no. Can finish that phrase.
All the other men have gotten it.
Right,
I
because-
don't have any
because
resistance.
for some
I
strange
have
reason.
no resistance. All I get from Naya is pure support. When I get from Mr. Hopkins support,
well,
when I get from Mr. Buddy's support, I
Is
say, one of
Naya
these days you'll come around.
marshmallow? Is Naya marshmallow?
Yeah, but here's a $1 million question. All you get from Naya is pure support. Is that a light moment?
Yes, that's a light moment.
They always say, "Oh well,
Yes, that's
okay,
a light
just checking because."
You can't deal with marshmallows all the time, and there are times when you got to deal
So
with.
now is a marshmallow.
But, well, this Pat says it.
No,
I
but
never said that.
Ted, keep in
I'm
mind,
just saying, there are-
Ted. Remember, she said it was a light moment. So
I'm just saying to you, when you get into the weeds and you deal with tough men, they will show their mettle. They will show their mettle all the time. Because men are men, and this is how we think. Real men now.
Yeah, but you're a little off course. Look now, congratulations. The lady who used to be the head of the IMF, she's now going on to be the,
Yes, she's got a job in the EU.
Yes,
So
EU.
she's moved from one top position to another
Central
top
Bank for the
position.
EU, yeah.
And the
Mrs.
woman who is
Lagarde,
head
that's
of
right.
the EU now is today has been
from Germany, yeah.
elected.
Yes. So
So
women
you
are
have
taking
two
over.
women there at the top.
Yes, they're doing well. It's only around here we still have the resistance.
That's
you
not
know?
true. Yeah, that's not true.
You need some, when we'll get there.
But we're dealing with various issues here, whether or not a woman would exercise her authority more than a man will. I'm not a psycho analyst, but in terms of exercising authority, I cannot yield and take any side on that. As it relates to propelling the female gender and giving them a fast track if it's possible, I would support that because we see that going.
Giving them.
Yes, giving them a fast
Not they
track.
earning it.
But they've been kept back too long. But
Not they earning it.
But I just want to draw reference to certain stands being taken across the globe. I mean, in Germany, because of the disparity in terms of what is earned monetary wise, the female doesn't pay transportation costs at all. So governments are taking stance and finding ways and means to compensate, and to really make a more of a level playground as it relates to gender. And one of the things I heard today, I was listening at a British station, and they say, well, there is one area that women are catching up with the man with, and surprisingly, they say drinking alcohol.
Oh boy.
And I laugh
I like
because, but that's what the stats have revealed. In today's world, we find the female now is catching up with the man in terms of the appetite to drink alcohol. Even smoking cigarettes, you find the female is doing a lot more of that than even the man these days. It's not a real light moment. It's something really to think about, But I am one who will vote for propelling the woman forward to a position that equates to men in terms of administration and otherwise. I wouldn't say let them fight the way, because the man have the upper hand and he can continue to suppress the woman because he got the keys, and of course there are a lot of things that can influence the whole general circumstance for that status quo to be maintained, so someone have to yield. And I think to give a woman a fast track to administrative position, it's not a bad thing. We must enjoy and realize the full human resource of the population.
Yeah, but I think
And
the women
until
are
we
really
seek to
earning
do
their
that-
keep, you know. I don't think that anything is being given to them at all. I think they're earning their keep. When you look at our universities and so forth, they're
come into it,
it's pure women now. The men are not earning their keep, and so you would expect, and this is not just in the Caribbean, this is worldwide. Women are out there yearning for, and they're more disciplined to a very large
Oh,
extent.
yes, yeah.
And they are earning their keep, and
So these are good
nobody
qualities.
is propelling them. They're earning their keep. Those days are finished. You know, you still have you still have on a certain
Remain.
level. If you're pretty, then you get given pushes there, here, and there, and so forth because of that. But by and large, women are earning their keep because they're being qualifying themselves. You know, whilst the men are not are just, you know.
I think the glass ceiling remain, you know.
They're beginning to figure it out, and as a result, schooling, which is critically important, they do understand that they have to spend more time in terms of schooling and ultimately getting themselves qualified, and ultimately they will reach the goals that they've set for themselves.
Discipline, that's the point.
If
The
men, for
discipline
some
is what
reason,
is important.
for whatever reason,
They
are
conform.
now pulling themselves backward or back, or attempting to be hesitant with regard to challenging women with reference to higher education, then it is to their own peril. But women would find that it is important for them to expand their time in school, and ultimately they'll be able to pick up the prize or the trophy. Like I've always said, the greatest gift to man from God is woman. At the same time, those who are asking for set-aside programs for women, I don't subscribe to that notion. They will eventually see the prize and they will go after it. And those who are being given, most of the time, simply because they have not earned it, they will fail. Look at it. Again, the opportunities are there, and it is not gender-based. The world is moving into this gender equality. Why? Simply because some of the women, for some reason, who should have been thrust forward with their own propellant, have not. But some of them realize, hey, look, I'm not going to just sit back and allow men to beat me at the goal. I am going to do what I have to do, academically, practically, physically, emotionally, as the case might be, because I want the prize too. And I always believe in the competitive spirit, which ultimately would bring all of us to the finish line. I just don't subscribe to this notion of giving. But most of the time when people talk, and let's give them. I am saying let them work for it.
No, I think
Access is there.
I
Access is there.
But I think you're missing out on the concept, though. The concept is not about giving someone something that they do not deserve. Because when you look at it, women are leaving universities, like Mr. Hobson just said, better equipped than their male counterparts. But they're not given, because of the structure as it is now, the same opportunities.
They will blow.
We've been asking tonight about the peculiar situation where Mr. Banwolf said, you know, in the planning department, you would have had, I think it was like 3 directors, women directors. You know,
It's 3 over the last 10, 15 years.
you know, and okay, so that on average 3 and 15 years, meaning that they're just like 5 years in a position. I was like, why is that so when we know we have some people who've been entrenched, almost as if they-
You would like to see them there at least 15 years, one.
But of course, longevity in the job, you need 10 years, I mean, I don't understand why is it they've been, rotated that, fast in that area.
But the
And
but
it's
the
a
women they're
peculiar
talking
situation.
about, they follow one another,
No, it's a peculiar situation, and I'm just saying,
So,
though,
I mean,
it
there was
had
no
to do with the
preference.
enforcement.
They were not removed because they're women, because another woman followed the first one. I could think of three, and the second woman followed the first one.
Yeah, but I would like to see the exit interview, why people would want to leave in a position that they, qualified for and all that. What kind of pressures, external pressures, because it may
Well,
have,
no, but
it very well may have
but
something to do with
Pat,
that.
the point you're trying to make is that they were removed. Well, you were thinking that they may be removed because they're women, but the women are
No.
put in their place. So it got to be some other reason.
No. I think, and this is just me, what I came up with, based on the local knowledge that I have. And I think that external pressures brought to bear on these women in these positions, not that they don't want to serve in these positions. Yes?
Let me just take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Weber.
Yes.
I have a question for Brother Edric Stanley. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Honorable. How you doing?
Good, brother. You just said that woman is man's greatest gift.
No, I said the greatest gift to man by God is woman.
So what's the greatest gift to woman by God?
Well, you can turn it around.
Man? No, I'm asking you.
Well, I never given that an extended thought, but off the top of my head, I would say yes.
Because if you don't agree, then I think you're setting an unlevel playing field and putting women almost in a subservient position to men. Because God presented women, gifted women to men. And so women are really incidental to the dynamic between God and man.
Well, off the top of my head, I said you flip it, and it means the same thing. The greatest gift to woman by God is man.
Okay, no, I just wanted to see how you stood on that.
All right?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Bartlett.
Well, I don't necessarily agree that the greatest gift to women, would have been man. But anyway,
You don't necessarily agree that God gave the greatest gift. All right.
No, I don't necessarily agree with that.
What about the reverse?
Well,
Neither.
not that Mr. Stanley made the comment, and I just let it pass, because some things you just let pass. As a good cricketer, you need to know what
Leave
to
them
leave alone.
outside the off them.
And that was a leave alone kind of thing. I don't think but it's good that someone else pick him up on it. I wasn't gonna go there. But seriously though, I like I said, I would like to see in the planning department somebody strong, so that we can enforce laws, be it male or female. Because of what I know about the interactions I've had, and I've been here on this earth long enough now to recognize that some people would negotiate positions that they ought not to negotiate, and some people would just stand fast on what the rules and regulations say. And I say that the best suited person for that would be a female, and I say get somebody in that position and support them, and so that let us have development and not just building, because men concentrate a lot on building. We want to make sure that we have a lot of things building here, building there, but in terms of development and things that would take us into the next century in a stronger position, because if we're just going to build and it's not being built properly, it's going to lead to a situation where it's going to fall apart sooner rather than later. And that is what we see happening a lot, and I don't need to have anybody who is compromising, especially for the poor people who live in the low-income houses. They're not affordable, and then they still have to be paying maintenance costs and all the rest of it. A house falling apart on you before, 30 years before you finish paying for it, can't be a good situation, because they're already house poor, and there's no money left over for them to do this kind of maintenance, and it's unfair to poor people, and we need to stop it. We need to cut it out.
Dr. Martin, is it that you are concluding that we are not building properly because we have a male in the tree at the physical planning department?
No.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure that I did not misinterpret what you would have
No.
said. Okay.
But I'm saying that the longevity of the women in the chair, I think has something to do with the fact that they want to enforce the law.
Women are emerging. I mean, we had 2
Support
female people at the
them. So support them.
I do it.
our parliament, Nevis Parliament, House of Assembly. We had Mrs. Morton, Marjorie Morton, and then we had Mrs. Christine Springett, 2 female, and Weber brought to the fore in the past that in the Department of Education, the ruling body are female.
So what?
I'm just saying that they're emerging simply because they've figured it out. They've gone on to school and they've gotten themselves highly educated, and ultimately they're going after the prize and challenging men for the position. And I am all for that. We're living in a competitive world, no matter how you look at it. And as a result,
But there's no competition for women in education. Men do not want to be educators. So there's no competition between men and women in that field. There's no competition for men and women in the field of nursing because men don't want to be nurses. So I don't know that your argument really stands up as it relates to equality in, using those 2 examples. I don't
well,
think.
the thing is that they're in those positions, and as they're in those positions, they will ascend to the top.
Naturally, but naturally
All
that's
right.
going to happen if you have no other males there. But what
They
has
will ascend
happened
to
in
the
the
top.
past, when you have a few males that come
And therefore, we should have these departments, since you are proposing that the competence or the higher level of competence is within the gender of female.
No, that's not what I said.
Well, no, I'm just putting my own interpretation to
Yeah,
it.
but don't say that I say it though.
And in that regard, it simply means that they will go forward and we will have a much better Department of Education, a much better nursing, field of nursing. And as we are on the hospital, I mean, somebody got to the fore the other day with me, they were telling me, oh, the hospital, oh, Mr. Brantley, this. And I said, if you were to look at it, that hospital is run by the doctors and the nurses and the matron. And in that regard, if Mr. Brantley decides to micromanage, he's going to be criticized of micromanaging a department, whereas that department is left up to the doctors. I mean, I was at the hospital at one point, and while I was there, I proposed something, and they told me, the doctor told me, it's the most progressive bit of recommendation I've heard since I've been in this place. But when came back with a decision, expecting a decision to be in my favor or what I was expecting, they just decided no. And it is because certain level of office politics is structured in that organization, and it has nothing to do with the Minister of Health. Female run it,
No.
doctors run it.
No. Most of the workers there at the hospital will be female, but who is the administrator? You do not have a female administrator up there, do you?
Not at the present.
Okay, there you go. In an organization, and we're here saying if you have a lot, who more likely to reach at the top? Not a female?
The doctors.
If predominantly in the nursing arena, you have 50%, well, 80, 90% of the people who work there, 95, let's go further than that, probably 95% of the people who work there are females. But who is the administrator male? Something ain't wrong with that.
They look right.
Hey, look at that.
I
Someone-
don't
Look at
think
the
anything
maths.
wrong with that.
Ain't the maths too hard?
No,
That's too hard, Mr. Hobson. Come on.
No, I don't think anything's wrong with that.
You go into a school.
Just
You go into a
before that-
school. You go into a school. You have 90-something% of the people in education are females, but who is the headmaster? A man. Something wrong with that,
Well, nearly all the schools are headed by female now. isn't it?
right? Because you hardly have any men around now. When you have the 1 or 2 men that you used to have, you take them out and you make them PSs.
Yeah,
Because-
have they got any male headmaster?
Yes, yes,
Must be very few. At Charlestown, maybe.
yes, yes. Charleston Secondary.
Female are doing very well in our
So they-
society.
Speaking from my own profession, when I entered the profession, there were no female judges. Now more than half of them are female.
Yep.
And at the top of it all, the Chief Justice is female.
Yeah, they're
And on the
emerging.
Court of Appeal, you have an even amount. So
Yes.
half men, half women. So they are holding their own. I mean, nobody
Emerging. They're getting there.
You know.
They figured it out.
Well, I don't want them get too far. I don't want it to be completely all women as judges. You know, I like the way it is now. That's sort of well balanced.
if
well
most of the
balanced.
graduates coming to school now are women, what do you expect gonna happen?
That's the problem.
Yep. So one of these days you might be asking, please give us a chance to the men, serve. But I'm saying make sure that you have equality in place now so that we'll use the same standard in order to give you a break later. So be careful what you set now, with the standard that you set now. Saying give women a break now because they need it, because when you need a break, you'll be asking for it.
I see female as human beings, and in that regard, they will operate just like the male. Meaning, when the time comes, you think they will give male a break? No. They will execute based on how they see things and probably on the side of gender. So male got to
You lost me there, but
male got to wake up
I
and
agree with that part.
understand that
I've been
ultimately, if you want to really stay in control, alpha male, a male that is dominant with leadership qualities and can prove his mettle, stay focused, stay competitive, and ultimately stay in charge.
what kind of anyway? Yeah.
No,
Not that
but
I
I just believe that the natural order of things will work itself out. I often hear Dr. Bartlett plea, and I hear the counter argument from Mr. Stanley, but I believe that in life, once people apply themselves, or once people understand where they want to get to, I think that we can accept the fact that in the past there were obstacles placed in the pathway of women, and that is well documented.
Mr. Brand, before
yeah.
we finish up, not a lot of time left, but two quick areas just by way of information for myself and those who probably can use the same information. Number one, the road from Cotton Ground to the Cliff Dwellers area, I think you had promised or suggested that you should have started already. What's happening with that? And secondly, the Pinnis Park, which was opened the other day on Sunday,
Yeah.
and so on. What's with that? And if you can, at least for my own edification, give me, to the best of your knowledge, a description of exactly what's involved, how it's going to be.
Well, I'll deal with the last one first. The Pinnis Park, we actually had the groundbreaking ceremony on Sunday. The president of Taiwan, in the name is a kind of was on island on Sunday to actually
Dr. Shea or something?
yeah Sai
Sai.
was actually on island during her Caribbean tour. She would have visited Haiti, then St. Kitts and Nevis, on to St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and it was a very historic occasion, Weber, because St. Kitts and Nevis would have had this relationship with Taiwan from since our independence. And this has been the first time that the president of Taiwan would have set foot on Nevis. It was a very timely visit, because this is a part that we have spoken about for some time, and the Taiwanese would have agreed to be the major funding partner in this venture, and she came to, in big part, to do the groundbreaking along with the premier. That took place on Sunday. With regards to the road from Cotton Ground to Cliff Dwellers, we had a slight delay and sorting out a few matters, design, contract, payment and all of that. It took a bit longer than we really anticipated. I think we wanted to make sure we got everything right. We actually wanted to start that road in June. The contractor, we would have signed the contract, we would have paid the mobilization amount. Contractor started to mobilize already, and I believe from the information I saw, I think it was yesterday or Friday, that they should be on the ground either this week or next week to get that project ongoing. So that is where that is with regards to the road from Cliff Dwellers to Cotton Ground. It was initially hoped that we would have be able to do the entire stretch from Cotton Ground to the airport because of financial constraint, and we are looking at some additional financing to complete the second phase. So that is where we are at as it regards to that particular stretch of road.
So it's ongoing now. It's gonna.
Yeah,
I actually saw some movement.
The contractor is in the process of mobilizing. I think they started putting some equipment on the island. I understand they had some challenges with the sewerage, so I think they're trying to sort out getting some of the additional equipment over from St. Kitts, but they are in the process of mobilizing.
And the area around the Nelson Spring area,
yeah,
I understand that because of the water table, that is why we had the challenges there. Is that under consideration?
Yes.
as it's read?
Hello?
Yes, is that under consideration as it's being redone?
Yes, well, but we spend quite a lot of time on the design in that area. The idea is that we would lift the road, I think up to, in some areas, up to 2 feet. We are going to make sure that we do some proper drainage that drain back into the pond area that goes into the sea. So quite a lot of time was spent on the design, especially with drainage, and ensuring that the material that is used, we did a lot of geotechnical surveys, boreholes into the road to find out exactly what was happening under the road. So we have that data. The design would have taken into consideration the type of soil and those kind. A lot of time was spent, especially in that area.
Okay. Mr. Stanley, any suggestion or advice at this juncture that you have for the Minister of Planning?
Not really, but what I would say is that the 2 foot elevation of the road would actually put some of the lands there below the road level, which might be adversely affecting the value.
Drainage, we are dealing with the drainage.
I understand it. Yeah. I understand that. But what I'm also looking at is if the water to be drained, if it's not drained, it means that you would have to do repairs more frequently.
Yeah, but he said it will be drained.
I understand that. I'm just looking at it at maybe.
If it's not drained.
If it's not drained,
okay,
then it means that repairs would be more frequent.
So we don't have to worry about that part.
Well,
because it will be drained.
Well, all right. Well, because that's the routing that is currently on the way.
Yeah, but you just want to point out what would happen if they didn't drain it.
Well, I'm just saying to you, Webo, we look at comparative value. And in that regard, I'm trying to figure out if it would cost less.
So in other words, if I'm building a building and I decide to put on a concrete roof, and I put on a concrete roof, and you tell me, oh, because if you didn't put on anything and you had a galvanized roof, this is what will happen, and so on and so forth and so on, right?
Well, usually that is the route, all right?
But we have already made the decision.
They've done the study, and they've recognized that the drainage must occur.
But to be fair to you, you did say you're not offering any advice or suggestion or anything anyway,
No.
right? Right, okay, I got you.
But I support Mr. Stanley this time around, because the last time they built a road close to my place, they were just concentrating on their road. They didn't care what happened to my property. I still have issues related to that. When it rains hard enough, I have issues. And so I have to be repairing on my side. And that cannot be fair to me. So when they're building or doing all the geotechnical things that they are to, they need to consider how it's going to affect the people in the area and their properties.
And that is true. I don't think that if we decide to undertake any project that we should make any property owner any worse off.
I am constantly all worse off.
Well, I apologize for that.
I had to call the contractor 2 o'clock one morning and ask him, guess what I'm wearing? I had on a pair of boots. And I had him guessing what I was wearing at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because there was water. There was water in my room. 2 o'clock in the morning, I called the contractor and I said, guess what I'm wearing? And you don't need to think what he, you could really imagine what he's thinking if I'm calling 2 o'clock in the morning to ask him what I'm wearing. But I was wearing a pair of water boots. You need to consider people, how it's going to affect them on the side of the road.
Absolutely.
The last thing I had is that Antigua backed out of the coughing up of the money to Barbados to take on the Liat shares.
Well, the Prime Minister said the negotiation is still continuing.
Well,
and he blamed his own negotiated somewhat.
Well, he said the bill is too high, and therefore he doesn't mind attempting to buy the shares off of Barbados, but he's not going to give them free money.
I would be wondering where Antigua getting the money from to pay all those millions.
It's a lot of money.
Chinese.
It's big money. China money?
I don't say.
It's big money.
It's a lot of money.
Big money. But,
I mean,
Gaston Brown said he's not going to give Barbados any free money, and therefore negotiations broke down. That's what I understood.
But he said he wanted the shares.
Well, he wanted shares, but at the same time, who did the valuation with reference to the price of the shares? So they got to go back to the drawing board and to see if the shares have been overvalued, and to make
You offering your services?
well, I give it for free. I give my services for free. But in this regard, he doesn't want to cough up more than he expects or he wants to cough up. But I guess Barbados would not let go if they don't get the kind of money they're looking for. 44 million is a lot of cabbage. A lot of cabbage.
Barbados need it anyway.
That's the last word. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.